TalkRadio.com presents
David Waldman.
Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. I guess we'll do another show, regardless of the fact that the president is, cooped up at the White House, now returned to White House Mansion from Walter Reed Army Medical Center, in case you want to add that into the name and make sure everyone knows which one you're talking about. I'm glad we straightened out the question of what happened to Bethesda Naval Hospital yesterday. I'd missed its absorption into a larger military medical umbrella. What a fascinating backstory that was. And revealing only that I am, frozen in time somewhere in the early to mid-1990s when it comes to the layout of Washington, D.C. But for the most part, that layout doesn't change all that often. So I think we're still on relatively solid ground. Okay, lots to round up today. Like we said, the president is back in the White House, probably against all medical advice, but I assume he simply ordered his way out of this military hospital. And it was pretty clear why it was done. They were looking for a show of strength, and they put something on, and it convinced his supporters that he looked fantastic and healthy and robust, having defeated the coronavirus soundly. And of course, the rest of us looked at it and said, I don't understand. He's huffing and wheezing. His shoulders are heaving, fighting for every breath, which I guess is fine. I don't know what to tell you. He's not going to learn any lessons from it. That seems clear, too. He's been tweeting afterwards, basically insisting that the whole thing is over, not just his infection with coronavirus, but the whole pandemic, that it is, after all, nothing but the flu. And after all, this is interesting, too. He sort of upped his estimates of his acceptable range of deaths from the flu in order to help, I think, subsume the number of deaths we've experienced here from coronavirus, though it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. We're over 215,000 dead from this round of the coronavirus, but his latest tweets indicate that everything's fine, it's just the flu, and did you know that 100,000 people regularly die from the regular flu? Which is, on the high end, you might say, about twice what you'd expect to die from the regular flu, whatever that's supposed to mean. But Greg's not here to correct us, so we'll just wing it and go with that. And of course we're twice what the number that he's now touting, which is twice the actual number is, so 4 times the number of people. And of course you'll recall that about a 1,000 years ago, I would say, Bob Woodward revealed that he had tapes of the president discussing, just how, I was going to say just how clearly he understood, but it's not, I guess that's not really the right words either, but you know what I mean. He was expressing his understanding of the seriousness of the coronavirus and the pandemic that it was causing, and then ignoring it publicly and pretending that it wasn't the case. He laid out exactly how dangerous it was and guessed that it was probably about 5 times more dangerous, or more deadly anyway, than regular flu, and it turns out to be the case. So at one point he sort of knew the information he needed to know in order to be moved to do something, but then didn't do anything, but then convinced himself that he did do those things, and so therefore something, and he's done a great job. So now we get to see whether he survives in the White House. My understanding is the place is kitted out pretty well for emergency medical treatment, and they're just basically going to turn the White House residence plus whatever parts of the executive mansion Trump really likes to hang out in and have his picture taken in into a convalescent ward for him and for Melania. No word. I mean, I don't know. Nobody feels like they're allowed to check in on how is Barrett doing, and or maybe they hustled him out of there and said for his own safety we ought to have him stay in, I don't know, whatever other quarters are available to him. who knows where he bounces around to. I don't really know what his schedule's like. If his school is virtual, I suppose he could do it from anywhere. I don't think they would have shipped him back to Trump Tower on his own. But it doesn't. I think Melania's parents are around somewhere. Maybe the three of them are sheltered somewhere together. Anyway, hopefully they don't spread it to him. The Conway family hasn't had such luck. Kellyanne Conway apparently has given the virus to her daughter Claudia, and her daughter Claudia appears to have her own interest in tormenting her mom and maybe her dad as well. So last night, just for the record, we'll note that there were more Claudia Conway TikToks circulating, which evidenced a very interesting sounding family drama, including one in which she used the video to document how Kellyanne Conway was attempting to dictate to her the contents of some more TikTok videos so that she could absolve Kellyanne of the guilt of having given Claudia the coronavirus. So that was kind of interesting. One short video in which you can hear Kellyanne's voice saying, and I want you to say, my mom didn't lie to me. She took 3 coronavirus tests and 2 were negative, and the last one was positive, and she, fully believed that she was not infected when she came home and blah, blah, blah. But now, which is interesting in its own right, because, of course, that's a message that indicates that you still don't understand how the virus works and or hope that your audience doesn't understand how the virus works. The whole White House outbreak is based on I think a willful misunderstanding of how the virus works. And all the reporters who were sick, the reporters who are not yet sick but who have been at White House events, others who attended, for instance, the Amy Coney Barrett announcement, have a large number of them have said that the advice, the direction from the White House at the event and at other similar events was that once you've gone through your rapid scanning on your way in, which is required of everyone attending events at the White House, that is, have your temperature taken with a thermal scanner and submit to one of those rapid tests, which Greg reminds us all the time are not particularly accurate, though I think they've made reasonably good use of them. I guess the idea is they screen you, and if you happen to trigger a positive on the rapid test, then they say, all right, no coming in today, and go get a real test. I don't remember the initials for it, but Greg does, and he'll remind us of it. But the more complicated test with the deep nasal swab, the brain swab, essentially, that they conduct, and then, that'll be the answer you're looking for. That'll give you a better picture of whether you really have it or not. There's really not much more you can do for testing people on their way into events than to give them the rapid test and hope that it catches what it catches. Anyway, their advice to people is if you manage to pass that, then not only are you allowed in, but in their telling of it, you're safe. That's it. You don't have it definitively, and that you can take off your mask now and walk around without a mask because you don't have it and you are among others who don't have it, which, if it were true, would theoretically mean that everybody was safe in walking around without their masks on. In reality, we're not so sure, not only because of the possible inaccuracies of the test, but also the possible well, I guess it falls under the umbrella of inaccuracy of the test to say you might not have the viral load just yet in your own body to be detectable. Though you may nonetheless, I don't know. I don't know whether you're nonetheless possibly contagious at the time, but I suppose you could be at least shedding a small amount of virus at that point. And then, of course, just generally speaking, we are coming into the quote-unquote regular flu season, and if we have an excuse to have everybody masked up on our way into the flu season, I would think we would see better results with our flu season and fewer illnesses and deaths, which are for the most part, relatively needless. We do, I guess the conservatives have a small point in saying that we do regularly risk a fairly large number of illnesses and deaths for the flu by deciding not to mask up each year. We don't make that decision. We could, I guess, for the health of everyone out there, we should, but we just never really believed in it very much. But maybe the coronavirus will change our minds about that. Long term, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, the advice that they give one another is if you pass the test, that is, you get a negative, then you just can run around without a mask on. That's not true, of course, but I guess Kellyanne Conway believed it, or believed in the power of it, the persuasive power of that advice, enough to surmise that others would believe that since she got 2 negative tests, she could walk around maskless in the family residence. Not true. Don't know if George has it or not, but Claudia says she does. But again, Claudia would do, I think, it seems like she would do just about anything to torture her mom. So who knows? Maybe she doesn't have it. But no one has contradicted it, not even Kellyanne Conway. So, if she won't contradict it, then I don't understand what the problem is. I think we can probably definitively say, what is the problem? It's mine, I guess. I was hedging my bets, but I think I can definitively say she's got it, and she got it from Kellyanne. The other video that was circulating was actually kind of amusing. Was, I guess, once again trying to work out the details of what Claudia should put out via TikTok, basically absolving Kellyanne of any responsibility for having given her the virus because of those 2 negative tests, when in reality, I might as well throw this in there. I think the actual medical advice is, if you have been exposed to someone who's infected such that you think you need to take a bunch of tests, in succession to figure out whether or not you really have this thing, you should be quarantining yourself pending word that you should change your quarantine into isolation. You should be blocking yourself off from others who are healthy so that you don't infect them, wearing masks, asking that others around you wear masks, limit your exposure to others, et cetera, because it should be by now well known that it could take several days for that positive test to show up. And it doesn't mean that as you're getting negatives, but still worried about and still about positives and still anticipating taking more tests to see whether there's a late breaking change in your status. You can't just go around, splattering your germs on other people and figuring it's safe. I'm giving you the safe germs, which really, honestly, even if you haven't been exposed to coronavirus, I don't really want you splattering your germs all over the place. Anyway, which is why masks are a great idea. Anyway, so Trump, I guess going even beyond that advice, has decided that if you're in in what he considers your own house, which he now considers the White House to be, you don't have to wear a mask at all. And anybody who catches coronavirus from you in your house, that's their problem. They shouldn't be there. It's your house. Or it's their job to catch coronavirus from you if you have it. As he arrived home and walked out of the helicopter, it was very, obviously a staged event, and the campaign sent out video of this arrival within minutes of his arriving, so as a fundraiser. And, so he did a whole spiel, a whole shtick, I should say, because he didn't speak, because he couldn't catch his breath. Shuffling off of Marine One, did a lot of saluting, and then he went up the stairs is that the South Portico? I don't know. He's up the stairs in the back of the White House off of the South Lawn where the helicopter lands, which under normal circumstances is probably not that comfortable for him anyway. But with coronavirus had him literally heaving. The video I saw of it, I gotta show the other video that I saw last night around here at home, because the one we saw the first time was like he's really huffing and puffing. He's clearly in distress. But this other video has another angle on him, and it was described in the tweet, and I think it's an accurate description, that he was wincing in pain in between breaths. And this one, he's really heaving and he's grimacing. And as others described him, he looked like a goldfish that had flopped out of his tank and was on the ground. Just so he's in big trouble. And I think all the doctors could have told you that. And I don't know whether he risks his health by going home, but it was a huge show that they wanted to put on. He saluted again from the balcony that he reached by going up the stairs. And then immediately, the big note for everybody was he, in a grand gesture, tears off the mask and then salutes and then heads inside where the staff is waiting to greet him and get infected by him. And they love it. And it's great to have glorious leaders' germs. If you can't have his genes, you might as well have his germs. And I guess they're all going to get sick for him. Lots of household staff already sick, along with the actual executive staff. But again, we're talking here about the danger that he poses to the butlers and housekeeping staff and others, protocol people who are non-political and have nothing to do with the executive functions of the presidency, but just are around to, I guess, bring him Diet Cokes and clean up his messes. And he's making them sick, and that's a big feature of the morning's news headlines. The number of people from both kinds of staff who are furious at having been endangered and, are just awaiting their own positive diagnosis as a result. So here we are. Lots to catch up on all of this. Let's see. As a matter of fact, this one here, I got a tweet here from our friend Bruce McFarland who says, I was surprised to see reporting from Maggie Haberman. We've been, focusing on her for a day or two to see whether the tenor of her reporting changes, about the underreported COVID-19 cases among service staff at the White House, like we were just talking about, which actually provided important information. So he was surprised to see Maggie either being this tough on the president or having actual information in her articles. I'm not sure which. Maybe both. The villagers actually reporting it is uncharted waters for the White House. And he includes actually the tweet here from Matthew Iglesias, who's summarizing, screen grabs from the different newspapers around the country, or at least the different stories that one newspaper has. I can't tell from the photos. Not only was Trump's behavior egregious, but the specific dynamics of presidential malfeasance that endangers the lives of lots of well-connected journalists, and that's another problem, people who, as they say, buy ink by the barrel, have been on hand to get infected from this White House under their bad advice. Well-connected political journalists is kind of uncharted waters as a news environment, as well as Bruce's observation, uncharted waters for Maggie Haberman, I guess, to be paying attention to the cases among the service staff. All right, let's dive into Pocket and the rest of the Twitter feed and share with you what's been occupying my time in the last, we do a 2-hour show, 22 hours since we've been gathering more information to share with you. Let's see. Maybe we can share here the AP story on this idea of how angry everybody is over at the White House. That will sum it all up. We don't often go just straight to the AP feed. We read from the marquee newspapers, but the rest of the country gets an awful lot of their news from these AP stories, so maybe a good idea to share this one. White House staff, Secret Service, eye virus with fear and anger, by Jill Colvin, Deb Reichman, and this pop-up that wanted you to start your day with the AP Wire, but we're not going to do that. Colleen Long is the writer who was just done this disservice by the pop-up. The West Wing, they say, is a ghost town, and that's not because everybody there has died. It's that everybody is ghosting and not showing up for work. Staff members are scared of exposure. And the White House is now a treatment ward, for not one but 2 COVID patients, including a president who has long taken the threat of the virus lightly, and still does. We should add. Yes, and as I was tweeting, was it this morning or last night? Thoughts and prayers go out to all those who thought that their thoughts and prayers, who thought and prayed that their thoughts and prayers were going to make any difference in whether or not Trump actually learned something from the virus. I don't know what to tell you. Have you not seen enough horror movies? If you've got somebody, if you've got the bad guy down, you can't, run away and say, hey, he's probably taken care of. You need to make sure that things are taken care of. And honestly, although there are a lot of political repercussions for what happens if he's replaced on the ticket by Pence, if you want Donald Trump to learn a lesson from the coronavirus, he's an extraordinary egoist, right? And a narcissist at that. The truth is, the only way he can learn a lesson from this virus is if he learns it really, really well. It's under circumstances in which he would learn it very briefly. He's not going to retain this knowledge for a long time, probably because at the end of it, the virus kills him. And he says on his way out the door, oh my God, I was wrong. Don't tell anybody. And then dies. If he has the virus and recovers, or can fake having the virus and fake a recovery, whatever the hell's going on, he's going to come out of it with his narrative. It doesn't matter if he coughs up blood for the next 5 weeks and then walks out the other end. And it doesn't matter whether you see him cough up blood. He will tell you it's maraschino cherries and that the whole thing has made him stronger. And his crowd will believe it. Anyway, besides the commentary, AP, sticking to this story here, President Donald Trump's decision to return home from a military hospital despite his continued illness is putting new focus on the people around him who could be further exposed if he doesn't abide by strict isolation protocols. And he's not going to, and you shouldn't believe he's going to. I suppose he would say you shouldn't expect him to. But I already hear from other stories that they were saying, oh, well, we're going to set up some remote working spaces for him. The best thing for him to do, the only way for him to comply with protocol from home is to confine himself to the living quarters of the White House and not enter the executive mansion. But he's going to spend his time in the executive mansion. They were saying they were going to set up the map room and I think the diplomatic room as remote work areas for the president, who doesn't need remote work areas. He works from home as it is. But he shouldn't be in the map room, shouldn't be in the diplomatic room, but they're going to give those rooms over to him. I guess he likes the setting. And in his mind, if he doesn't go into the Oval Office, then he's not going to work and observing the protocols. But if you have to bring him a Diet Coke and he's going to cough all over you, what the hell do you care what room he does it in, right? It shouldn't matter. And science doesn't care either. Throughout the pandemic, White House custodians, ushers, kitchen staff, and members of the U.S. Secret Service have continued to show up for work in what is now a coronavirus hotspot, with more than a dozen known cases this week alone. Trump, still contagious, has made clear that he has little intention of abiding by best containment practices. As he arrived back at the White House on Monday evening, the president defiantly removed his face mask and stopped to pose on a balcony within feet of a White House photographer. He was seen inside moments later, surrounded by numerous people, as he taped a video message urging Americans not to fear a virus that has killed more than 210,000 people in the U.S. and 1 million worldwide. White House spokesman Judd Deere said the White House was taking every precaution necessary, which clearly they're not, to protect not just the first family, but every staff member working on the complex, consistent with CDC guidelines and best practices. But if you tear your mask off, you're not. So that's a lie. He added that the physical access to the president would be significantly limited and appropriate protective gear worn by those near him. Not true. The appropriate protective gear at this point is a gown, gloves, mask, face shield, goggles, respirators, the whole bit. And no one's going to be wearing that. You can be sure. Nonetheless, the mood within the White House remains somber, with staff fearful they may have been exposed to the virus. They have been. They're fearful that they've contracted it. As they confront a new reality, a work site that once seemed like a bubble of safety is anything but. They have also been engaged in finger-pointing over conflicting reports released about the president's health, as well as a lack of information provided internally. Many have learned about positive tests from media reports, and several were exposed without their knowledge to people the White House already knew could be contagious. Indeed, it took until late Sunday night, nearly 3 full days after Trump's diagnosis, for the White House to send a staff-wide note in response. Even then, it did not acknowledge the outbreak. As a reminder, read the letter from the White House Management Office, if you are experiencing any symptoms, go jump off a cliff, right? Please stay home and do not come to work. Staff who developed symptoms were advised to, quote, go home immediately and contact their doctors rather than the White House medical unit, because they're not going to help you. They're all about spoon-feeding the president. Even when Trump was at the hospital, his staff was not immune to risk, or rather, even when Trump was at the hospital, there you go, his staff was not immune to risk. Trump had aides there recording videos and taking photographs of him. On Sunday evening, he took a surprise drive, of course, around the hospital to wave to supporters from the window of an SUV. The Secret Service agents in the car with him were dressed in PPE, but not sufficient PPE. I saw some pictures circulating saying, from hospitals, with the full body coverage, saying this is the level of PPE you're supposed to wear just to make rounds in a coronavirus ward. What the Secret Service agents were wearing was more than most people wear, but that is, most people casually wear around the house, certainly, but not enough to thoroughly protect them from what the president was carrying. But anyway, appropriate precautions were taken in the execution of this movement to protect the president and all those supporting it, including PPE, Deere said. The Marines that I saw come off of Marine 1 to lower the stairs for him, wearing just a face mask. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with the AP backgrounder story. I think that'll lay the foundation for the rest of the day. Trump campaign spokesman Hogan Gidley, I guess he's transferred over to the campaign side, dismissed media concern about the agent's safety as absolutely stupid and foolish, which will play really well when one of them gets sick and announces it, although I don't know how widely circulated the announcement will be and whether we'll find out about it or they'll successfully hide it. But if it ever leaks, that's not going to look good, but no one cares whether Hogan Gidley looks good or tells them the truth. So I suppose it won't have a great deal of impact. Again, as I mentioned, the Marine, I don't know what they call him, but the Marine steward of Marine 1 that comes out first and lowers the stairway and then gets out and salutes as the president walks by. He's in his dress uniform, and I'm positive, I don't know whether they ever even tried to outfit him with a full load of PPE. He rode in the helicopter, which is, again, a pretty tightly sealed environment and not a very big one at that. I mean, it's bigger than my helicopter, but what can I tell you? But it's not a huge helicopter, and helicopters aren't gigantic to begin with. Bigger than the limo, true, but not as big as, let's say, I don't know, a bus. But even a bus isn't any place you would want to be. Certainly not as big as the outdoors, let's say that. Anyway, he came out, and I don't know whether they ever gave any thought to putting him in a gown that would cover his body, and head covering and a face shield and goggles and respirator and gloves and all of that stuff. But I'm sure that if they did, my guess is Trump wouldn't have it. He'd say, this is ridiculous. We pay you to look like a Marine in dress uniform getting out and saluting me when I get off of Marine One, and that's your role, and that's what you're going to do. Even if that means, I will concede to you a mask, a cloth face mask, that you can sit in here with me. But of course, as we know, cloth face mask isn't really actually adequate protection against the virus in normal circumstances. It's chiefly about preventing you from unknowingly transmitting anything to someone else, although it does offer some level of protection. It's not enough for the poor guy who had to sit in there and, risk contracting the virus because the president wanted to put on this show. But as you know, the Trump family, the Trump team, their reaction, for instance, to these stories about complaints from the Secret Service is that their job is to, risk death for the president. Of course, that's a very broad view of things. They are willing to risk death to save the president from an imminent threat of death, but it doesn't mean that so long as the president is nearby, death means nothing to them. And I think, as someone aptly put it, the idea is that they are willing to take a bullet for the president, not from the president. That's the difference here. And you're supposed to kind of respect their willingness to do this, not exploit it. I mean, it's not their job to die for the president's every whim. Otherwise, Don Jr. could start hunting them for trophies and it would be okay. But that might be what they think, that whatever happens to them happens to them. That's their job, to die if necessary. And what makes it necessary? The president saying he wants to go somewhere, whether it's for a joyride or for purposes of national security. It doesn't matter to them. Similarly, Marines know what they were signing up for, and if they get killed in the line of duty, and their line of duty is putting stairs down from the helicopter to the lawn for the president, then so be it. Of course, you're only going to wear a mask and nothing more. We don't want anything to look abnormal, and if you die, you die. You're a Marine. Get over it. That's their view of things. So, back to the Secret Service agents. Hogan Gidley, of course, said if they die, they die, more or less. That's their job. But agents, surprisingly, I guess, told a very different story. Several who spoke with the Associated Press expressed concern over the cavalier attitude the White House has taken when it comes to masks and distancing. Colleagues, they said, are angry, but feel there's little they can do. One, speaking after White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany tested positive on Monday. I don't think I forgot to mention it. It happened after the show. But yeah, there's another 10 people on the list. It's really kind of incredible. But I don't know how she could have avoided it, but she didn't. So anyway, one agent, speaking after McEnany tested positive on Monday, said it felt like he and some of his colleagues had been spared only by a measure of good luck. And we don't know whether he's been spared yet or not. Others noted the difference between facing outside threats they have trained for, a gun, a bomb, or a biohazard, true, and the difference between that and being put at additional risk because of behavior they characterized as reckless at times. The agents spoke, of course, on condition of anonymity. The Secret Service has refused to disclose how many of its employees have tested positive or have had to quarantine, citing privacy and security. But in the midst of the election, thousands of agents are on duty, and anyone who tests positive can easily be subbed out, officials have said. Secret Service spokeswoman Julia McMurray said the agency takes, quote, every precaution to keep our protectees, employees, and families, and the general public safe and healthy. Trump has joined First Lady Melania Trump, who also tested positive, in the residential area of the White House. It's typically served by a staff of roughly 100 people, including housekeepers, cooks, florists, groundskeepers, and 5 or 6 butlers, who interact most closely with the president, said Kate Anderson Brower, who wrote, "The residence inside the private world of the White House. During the pandemic, that staff has been reduced to a skeleton crew. That's a cruel metaphor. With mask wearing much more prevalent than in the West Wing, where few have worn them regularly. And I guess with no photographers around, perhaps the president is a little bit more lenient about letting his staff wear masks. Maybe not, though. Maybe he's just a cruel a-hole wherever he goes. Brower said she recently spoke with 3 former employees who expressed concern about the health of current workers, but were too afraid to speak publicly. The Butlers always feel protective of the first family, but there's just a concern about whether or not the staff would get sick, Brower said. Most are older, she said, because they work from one generation to the next. There are people who've been on the job for 20 to 30 years. They want to work to get their full pensions and also not die. I think that's a fair statement. Many of the White House resident staffers are black or Latino, which probably irks Trump to no end. Or maybe, I guess that probably thrills him, actually, now that I think about it. But for different reasons, let's say. They are, of course, among the demographic groups showing higher rates of infection and death in the pandemic, largely because they work in those jobs. Overall, deaths among minorities have risen far higher than among white people. Data from the CDC shows, among the risk factors, some communities of color are likely to have lower incomes, less often have insurance to help fight sickness. It's sort of a one-off there, but it's closely connected, but whatever. Anyway, and have jobs that are deemed essential and expose them to higher risk of infection. That seems more important. For months now, cleaning staff have also privately voiced concerns about their safety, including a lack of access to testing and inadequate protective gear. So once again, they're back to testing causes cases. If we don't test our household staff, there won't be any reports of household staff becoming positive. Similarly, I think they've stopped testing senators lest word get out that fewer Republican senators might be available for maintaining order and a quorum in the Senate, and giving rise to theories about how Democrats might take advantage of that. So I think everybody's trying to head home, and if they're going to get a test, get tested locally and possibly try to keep it quiet. Anyway, where were we with this? Oh, yeah, Stephanie Grisham, the First Lady's spokeswoman, said that all precautions are being taken to ensure the health and safety of the resident staff, but she declined to be specific. Wasn't she like interim press secretary on the other side? All right. Anyway, while the White House has refused to implement new safety measures, such as making masks mandatory, the building was noticeably emptier Monday, with more staffers now staying home on days when they're not needed on site. On Monday morning, there was just a single staff member on the ground floor press office, where 2 medical staff members administered COVID-19 tests surrounded by empty desks. It's not the first time the White House has had to contend with the virus. During the flu pandemic of 1918, President Woodrow Wilson was infected, as were members of his family and the White House staff, including the secretary and several Secret Service members, according to the White House Historical Association. So were 2 sheep, as it turns out, who spent their days grazing on the South Lawn, before the days of the helicopter, I guess. They were hospitalized but recovered. What a fascinating detail to throw in there at the end, and that is the end of the AP story. 1, that it didn't affected sheep at all, and 2, that the sheep were hospitalized and recovered, and later, I guess, eaten. I don't know. Probably not. But anyway, that's an interesting little bit to the story. It made me forget what I wanted to go to next, really, quite honestly. I'm trying to think where we were talking about. Oh, yes, the fact that Wilson himself was infected in that pandemic. You shouldn't lose sight of this, though I think largely in the reporting we have. Let me see. Let me go get the numbers. The coronavirus numbers that I've been following over Worldometers tells you pretty quickly, if you do the conversion in your head, what percentage of the population has reported themselves to have been infected. In this case, for the United States, where were we? Total cases, right? Or total cases per 1 million population are, Where were we? Oh, I got to sort this again so I can find this. Okay. 23,170 total cases per million population, which mathematically tells us that 2.3% of the population, it's the rough equivalent of 2.3% of the population, I guess, reporting positive test results, though there have been theories for a long time that something possibly as high as 10 times that number might actually be infected or have been infected at some point and maybe never got around to getting tests. I think that number probably drops a little bit now that we're doing more testing. I think in the initial days of the pandemic where lots of people were unable to access tests, but the virus outbreak in New York, for instance, was causing enormous numbers of people to become sick and even to die. I think that probably that multiplier has come down. But officially, we got about 2.3% of the population tested and tested positive. So the fact that and it is, I mean, on the one hand, that's a lot of people because that's 7.6, nearly now 7.7 million people to get to that number. But on the other hand, as a percentage, it's not a very high percentage of all of us, of the 100% that are out there. It's the kind of number that people often dismiss as being relatively low percentage-wise. So 2.3% of the population has tested positive. And they say they're taking such extraordinary measures to keep the White House and the president and the staff there safe. But I mean, I guess just think about that. Only 2.3% of the population has got it, but among that 2.3%, curiously enough, is the president, the first lady, the press secretary, 3 Republican senators who were at this event, and basically, I mean, all the lineup of people who were at the event. But thinking about the top level members of government and their staff who got sick just in the last couple of days, or who tested positive just in the last couple of days, being curiously, mysteriously, among the only 2.3% of the entire country that have gotten this thing and then gotten a positive test, tells you a little bit about what's going on. One, that they're not doing a particularly good job of keeping the White House and higher levels of government safe, true. But 2, that they're compounding the problem. The members of this higher levels of government are compounding the problem by refusing to actually take seriously the measures that are supposed to keep them safe. So, the story we're being told here is there are practices that will keep and have to this point kept 97.7%. What number are we up to? 97, whatever, 97%. I'm not doing math this early in the morning. Of the country, positive test free anyway, so far. But the tiny slice of the country that has got it turns out to be the most prominent mask flouters, is what I was going to say. The mask flouters, or mask deniers, or COVID deniers overall, of the whole bunch. People who take it seriously and at least put a mask on once in a while and stay away from other people seem to, generally speaking, not be coming down with the virus. And people who say that's all BS and screw the scientists are the ones who, I don't know, tend to come down with the virus. I mean, is that not how you would read it? I don't think there's really a lot of flexibility in that. In case you were wondering what the most diehard of the idiots who support Trump are thinking about the fact that he's struggling with coronavirus and heaving on the White House steps, we have this story for you from the good folks, well, one of the folks at TPM. I don't know how good he is. You tell me. We'll read his story. Matt Schuem. Sounds like a nice guy, but maybe he reports a crappy story. Let's read it. QAnoners, those are the stupid people that I told you would believe in the president no matter what. QAnoners think Trump's COVID, like everything else, is it a hoax? Is it a scam? Is he just trying to troll the left? What's he doing? It is a warning sign for satanic pedophiles. Well, they did say it was like everything else, so of course it is. I don't know how, but Matt Schuem will tell us the unbelievable news of how they arrived at this. As they've done numerous times during his presidency, the believers in the QAnon conspiracy theory have taken President Donald Trump's hospitalization for COVID-19, which hasn't happened numerous times, but their interpretation of things, as stupid as the hospitalization, into something good has happened a number of times, and here it comes. They've taken his hospitalization as yet another sign that he will imminently announce the mass arrests of scores of elite deep state pedophiles. I believe yesterday, before his release from the hospital, the story was he's being safely ensconced at Walter Reed while the arrests go down, so that there's no, striking at him at the White House, although everybody knows he's at Walter Reed, so how is he? I don't know. Who cares? It's a conspiracy theory. But here you go. Rather than assuming that Trump had actually been struck by the virus, which has infected more than 7 million people in the United States, QAnon believers have asserted online yet again that Trump has really been busy carrying out a key element of the conspiracy theory, that is, mass arrests of Trump's political enemies, or as Q adherents call it, the storm. I don't have a sound effect for the storm, but oh yeah, well, we have the horror dramatic, right? The storm. There you go. It's a storm. What are you talking about? I have exactly the right sound effect for it. We've got a lot of them that we forget to use from time to time. Anyway, deep down, they know this is their biggest nightmare come true, wrote one QAnon-oriented Twitter account on Friday. He isn't sick. He's about to unleash the greatest military operation in the history of mankind. And that turned out to be Operation Dumbo, the one where they used the helicopter to airlift an elephant to I don't know where, but instead it was the 239-pound goldfish out of water, Donald Trump. So there you go. He isn't sick. He is. He didn't unleash any military operation. And, of course, deep down, they know this is their biggest nightmare come true. And I don't know. I'm not certain whose nightmare it was, but deep down it turned out, both at the surface and deep down, it turned out that your guy was sick. The post was retweeted nearly 5,000 times. That's not a whole lot, really. On Sunday, the same account speculated that, quote, if he is already returning to the White House soon, then operations went very smoothly. Yes, all those arrests you heard about. His political fact detailed separately, several QAnon believers asserted that Trump was really on Air Force One this whole time, not at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. That's, I guess, the real name for it. Some speculated that Trump's recently deceased brother, Robert, had in fact faked his own death and was now acting as Trump's body double. I don't know if they looked that much alike, quite honestly, but they might look a lot more alike now, the two of them. Trump does not look good. Anyway, the one we're used to talking about, Donald. Anyway, neither does Robert, probably, although he might have been embalmed. I don't know. Maybe he looks fantastic compared to what Donald looks like. NBC News' Ben Collins and Brandy Zadrozny, close observers of the QAnon movement, we've read their stuff, reported that elated QAnon followers reacted to the president's hospitalization with near universal celebration. Well, doesn't that make them deplorable people and they should be shunned from political discourse? I mean, they are, and they should be, but they're not. We're reporting on them left and right. But I heard that if you celebrated the president being in the hospital, you are a bad, bad person. The expansive conspiracy theory, which holds that Trump is battling behind the scenes against the satanic, pedophilic cabal that runs Washington, that's a very simple explanation, has exploded in popularity in recent weeks. That comes with political power. Recently, 17 Republicans and one independent in the House of Representatives voted against a resolution condemning QAnon. It's not a whole lot of political power, but it should have been zero, I guess is what they're saying. The Q in the conspiracy theory's name refers to an anonymous internet author who uses the letter as a moniker and who purports to share internal intelligence via absurdly cryptic message board posts. Over the years, Q's predictions have turned out to be wrong again and again, and yet, as the conspiracy theory researcher and writer Mike Rothschild observed, what a great name to have when you're a conspiracy theory researcher, Rothschild, is hardly the first time that news about Trump has been interpreted as yet another major development. Here's his tweet about it, saying, QAnon believers think the president is pretending to go into quarantine because the storm is upon us for real this time, just like all the other times, and including screenshots of tweets that purport to believe that. To Q believers, Trump is being forced to isolate himself, or rather Trump being forced to isolate himself wasn't proof that he'd come down with the potentially deadly illness, but that he was going into deep protection for the moment while the great storm of mass arrests, long predicted by Q, finally came to pass, and the enemies of America are brought to justice, Rothschild wrote. You'd think they'd get tired of the winning after a while. Q hasn't actually posted anything since Trump's hospitalization, which suggests that it was Trump, I guess. But anyway, the bizarre conspiracy theories spun by the QAnon community about Trump's COVID diagnosis, despite Q's silence, illustrates how QAnon can persist even if Q never posts again, wrote Travis View, host of the QAnon Anonymous podcast. QAnon Anonymous, that's right, which tracks the conspiracy theory. Okay. So, somewhat interesting development on the Q front, in case you were wondering what their reaction might be. If you didn't care, sorry to waste your time. Let's see. I had an article set aside from the New York Times, but apparently it's one of their COVID scrolling articles, so we can browse through until I figure out which one it was, and that I wanted to bring you in full, and just browse the headlines. This is an interesting one here. COVID-19 live updates, the first one at the top of the list. Gun violence is up as the virus hinders programs to stop it. That's bad news. Let's see. Most types of crime have dropped in the U.S. during the pandemic. The exception is shootings and homicides, because if people are going to die anyway, why the hell not shoot them now, I guess is the thinking, if there is any. New stimulus deal still possible. We can talk to Joan about that in our second hour. Then, of course, Trump with his message last night via video. Don't be afraid of COVID, Trump says, undermining public health messages. That wasn't it either, I don't think. Yes. The White House blocks new coronavirus vaccine guidelines. This is one of those sneaky insider plays. That's very interesting, and I think a short thing that we might be able to finish up before our next break. Top White House officials are blocking a strict new federal guidelines, or a set of guidelines, for the emergency release of a coronavirus vaccine. That is, guidelines should you come up with a vaccine for how to release it that would help ensure its safe and effective distribution. First of all, make sure that it is safe and that the distribution is safe and equitable. Well, you know, that maybe they were blocking it because they didn't want it to be equitable. Anyway, the point here is that the CDC was prepping for the release of a real, actual vaccine that might already have been proven safe or something like that. And the White House is saying, we're blocking that, not because they don't want the vaccine distributed, but because they don't want the CDC wasting time on red tape like, is it safe for humans to take this vaccine? And is there anything that we ought to know about how to do it safely at all? And that's just red tape. And everybody knows that if you have a vaccine, the safe way to give it is to put it in a hypodermic needle and stick it in people. Where? Doesn't matter. Probably your arm. I don't know. I've seen vaccinations happen on TV. So blah, blah, blah. Why are we wasting our time? Everybody knows how vaccines work. I'm not a doctor, but I've seen medical shows. Let's get this show on the road. That's essentially what they're doing. Right. So they're blocking the new guidelines for emergency release of a coronavirus vaccine. And remember, it would be emergency. The testing isn't really done. There hasn't been enough time. They've already decided to forego all of that, but under these guidelines. The best we can do to keep it safe given the emergency circumstances are X, Y, and Z. And the White House says, F all of that. So they are objecting to a provision that would almost certainly guarantee that no vaccine could really be authorized before the election on November 3rd, which is only a couple weeks away. So, you know, you wonder if they were willing to rush something out in 5 weeks instead of 4, what were they giving up in order to do that. And the White House says, to hell with all of that. Do it when we say. So, facing a White House blockade, the Food and Drug Administration is seeking other avenues to ensure that vaccines meet the guidelines. That includes sharing the standards with an outside advisory committee of experts, perhaps as soon as this week, that is supposed to meet publicly before any vaccine is authorized for emergency use. The hope is that the committee will enforce the guidelines, regardless of the White House's reaction. The struggle over the guidelines is part of a months-long tug-of-war between the White House and federal agencies on the front lines of the pandemic response. White House officials have repeatedly intervened to shape decisions and public announcements in ways that paint the administration's response to the pandemic in a positive light. That pattern has dismayed a growing number of career officials and political appointees involved in the administration's fight against a virus that has killed more than 210,000 people in the U.S. The vaccine guidelines carry special significance. By refusing to allow the FDA to release them, the White House is undercutting the government's effort to reassure the public that any vaccine will be safe and effective. Health experts fear that's pretty bad. The public must have full faith in the scientific process and the rigor of FDA's regulatory oversight if we are to end the pandemic, the Biotech Industries Trade Association pleaded on Thursday in a letter to President Trump's health secretary, Alex M. Azar II, asking for the release of the guidelines. So basically, you think you understand the story there. The FDA was coming out with guidelines meant to ensure the safety of the vaccine and, secondarily, but just as important, ensure that the public had reason to believe in the safety of the vaccine and would therefore be willing to take the vaccine. And the White House says, well, that could delay our ability to spring it as an October surprise, and so therefore, to hell with the safety protocols. You're not allowed to claim this vaccine is safe. Just put it out there and stick it in people and see what happens. If everybody dies, that's probably Biden's problem. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. I just saw a tweet that I've seen before and we've discussed, I think, before, flyby, which is from Tim O'Brien. And I guess scrolling over his name isn't going to be enough, but Tim O'Brien is a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, prior work experience at the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. And HP, is that HuffPost or is it the Hewlett Packard? You tell me what your guess is. Anyway, Tim O'Brien pointing out what the timeline was for Herman Cain, saying a humbling Herman Cain / coronavirus timeline. But you already know the timeline. There's lots of entries in it, but to save you some time, basically there was 40 days from the day he picked up the virus at the Trump rally to his death. There are fewer than 40 days left in this presidential election campaign season. We'll be voting, or rather, I guess I should say everybody's already voting now, but November 3rd is less than 30 days away. So I think that offers everybody some interesting possibilities. For people who couldn't decide, well, nobody would admit it, but, there were lots of people walking around saying, I hope maybe this really will take them out, right? Nobody wanted to own up to that, and for understandable reasons. But a lot of other people dissuaded themselves from saying what they were truly looking for by saying, well, no, I want him to survive and to see himself lose the election, or for him to be prosecuted afterwards and die in jail. Everyone was somehow willing to say that. There's lots of people. I don't want him to die from coronavirus. I want him to survive and be convicted of his crimes and die in prison of coronavirus. I don't know whether they really combined the two or not, but that was somehow acceptable protocol because we're weird and hypocritical people in the United States. Same around the world, of course, but I can only speak for us because the rest of you are weirdos and I can't understand your language. How do you like that? Does that make me more sympathetic figure? All right. Well, at any rate, that was the acceptable protocol for some reason. And the good news is you could have both now, or at least some of you can have both, he could simply succumb to this coronavirus infection that he currently has on a timeline that allows him to survive to see his defeat at the hands of the American electorate. But that won't satisfy the people who are waiting for him to be convicted for his crimes. This is true. So one of you is going to have to be disappointed. Or maybe me. But anyway, I just thought I would put that out there and remind everybody, the election is very close. It is coming shortly, and the timeline is very compressed here. So that was the purpose of bringing that one to your attention. As I'm sorting through the things I have in pocket here, trying to decide what's important, well, let's see. I'm reminded that I want to double back on something that I got an email from a listener. But first, let me stop on this thing here. This must have come to me via Twitter. Yeah, finding who sent me this one directly poses a little bit more of a challenge. I don't know if I put away. Did I get it via a tweet? That was my recollection is I might have got it in a tweet that didn't have the KITM hashtag in it, and so therefore it might have flipped by very quickly. Yes, I've done myself a great service by pocketing the tweet. It was our good friend and morning companion Mike Musson who tweeted, and I'm not admonishing you that you didn't use the hashtag, but you didn't use the hashtag. But that's me saying it in a positive, encouraging, constructive way. But anyway, it was important enough that I saw it and said, oh, no hashtag, I will have to pocket it. He sent me this tweet from Bex Lamb, L-A-M, Bex being B-E-X, in case you're trying to spell it, a pharmacist, I guess. And you won't find her under that name on Twitter. You'll find her under the far more whimsical name Arya, which I guess means we're talking about Arya Stark from the Game of Thrones, A-R-Y-A. Arya kicks butt. She does, but that doesn't tell us anything about her skill as a pharmacist. Under the assumed name of Bex, which I guess is a nickname for Rebecca, Bex Lamb, who says this. Ready? We'll finally get to it. Regeneron, the company that developed the experimental antibody cocktail used to treat Trump, this is an interesting thing, uses human embryonic stem cells in their research. Isn't that fantastic? I mean, I'm okay with it. You're okay with it. Trump is opposed to it. By the way, so is Amy Coney Barrett, who, of course, believes life begins at fertilization and is adamantly opposed to the use of human embryonic stem cells in the research. But human embryonic stem cell research, if it works, in this case, for this case, saved Donald Trump's life. Maybe it won't. Maybe his sense of disgust at having benefited from the research on human embryonic stem cells will cause his, such distress that his physical state breaks down. But so far, it looks like it has saved his life. It certainly made it possible for him to come back and have this photo op moment. And so he owes a great debt of gratitude to the embryonic stem cells and the brave scientists willing to use them in the face of Trump's brand of political correctness and Amy Coney Barrett's brand of judicial correctness. And by way of proof here, there's a company fact sheet, I guess, that's offered up here with Regeneron's position statement on stem cell research. I'm sure it's fascinating. It's not that long. It's a one-pager, but I think you get the gist of the story. And, of course, the gist of the commentary. His Supreme Court pick is at odds with the company providing his treatment, and that's pretty interesting all by itself. Okay, the other thing that I had pocketed in order to share with you, I'm going to have to go into my email, and I hope I starred it so that I can share it with you. Now that I've gotten permission back from the writer to mention who sent it to me. I mean, it won't make a great difference in terms of the information, but it's always nice to get credited. But and maybe we'll be introducing a new morning companion and frequent correspondent Arthur Schulenberger sent me this. Thanks, Art. And this was an interesting thing that he picked up by himself. And let me share this with you. He starts out with a greeting. My name's David. So he says, hi, David. You know how these letters things work. I heard something that I thought could be very significant in one of Bob Woodward's first interviews back on September 15th that he gave relating to his book that was being published that day. And the book is Rage, and there's a subtitle, and I don't remember it, but you know the book we're talking about. If you want to get it and check it out, you can do that, even without my additional help. I half expected there to be some follow-up to it by the press, but it seems to have sunk without a trace, and you can imagine why. I mean, even under quote-unquote normal Trump circumstances anyway, there are so many stories happening at once that, it's a strategy for them. Just flood the zone with crazy stories so that you can bury the ones you like the least. Or even just for fun. They just love creating stories and nobody can focus on anything. We all have ADHD thanks to Trump. But yeah, so he saw something in one of the interviews and said, wow, that's an interesting point, and has not seen it covered since. Maybe it has been and we just happen to not have seen it, but I haven't seen much discussion of it. Arthur continues here by saying, I had forgotten where I heard the interview, and so I guess he needed to spend a couple of days searching around through numerous interviews with the media and then finally found it. And guess where it was? It was in an interview with Stephen Colbert. Leave it to the comedians to uncover the best stuff. I've pulled out the relevant clip, attached it below. I've got it now, where Woodward describes, do I play the clip? I mean, it's about a minute long. I'll play it. But, here's what you're listening for. Woodward describes listing 12 to 14 areas, including testing and international cooperation, that he listed to Trump as areas to pursue for a robust response to COVID. Essentially what's happening here is he's discussing his conversation with the president, which was taped, as all of his conversations were, in which he's saying, these are just generally, I think he just kind of cribbed it from existing information. These are the general areas in which a competent president might expect to be operating in the face of a threat of a pandemic. Are you in fact doing these things? What are you doing in these areas that we can talk about and tell people, how hard you were working or not, I guess, on the pandemic? And what happens is he lists these things, and it's just, a generalized list that makes sense, that probably would have been like, say, in the playbook binder that Obama left behind, but would probably also really be on the internet anywhere if you wanted to look for it. Meanwhile, the story is that Trump was uncharacteristically interested in this list and asked Woodward if he had the list written down and could he please repeat it, which, is a good thing that he would be interested and wanted to get the list, but is a bad thing in terms of, like, again, the list is like, you should be testing people, you should be cooperating with international agencies and with other countries to kind of coordinate your response, you should be trying to keep people from getting sick, and you should be looking maybe to see if you could find some medicine to help them, kind of basic stuff. But, a 12 to 14 point plan that you would expect from any minimally competent administration. And he's like, what was that again? Help people? Well, how does that go? Do you have that written down? That's fascinating. So anyway, Art says, since Woodward claims to be willing to release audio clips, I would like there to be an effort to get this particular clip of this conversation released, specifically to, one, let us hear for ourselves. What is Trump's level of interest in this list? Is it, does it sound like it's more passing? Does it sound like, oh my God, there's really something I could be doing? What is it? Number two, get the date of the conversation so that you can find out for how long did Trump know that there was something he could have done to help us all and insist on not doing it. And three, to compare the list of items on that list to later efforts initiated by Trump. Did he get any ideas from the list and did he do anything? Then he asks for my thoughts. And there they are. My thoughts on the subject are, I will read this letter, play the clip, and editorialize a little bit along the way. It is pretty amazing, I think, that no one appears to have picked up on this one, though it's easy to understand why. It's, by comparison, a small bore item compared to, Donald Trump has coronavirus and, might be nearly dying from it and doesn't care and wants to give it to everybody in the White House staff, and he doesn't care that 200,000 people have died. That's small potatoes to him and F everything. Compared to that, it is small. But let's see. I grabbed the audio from it. It doesn't really make any sense to play you the video, but I will share the video with you from the Colbert Show. Enhanced it a little bit, turned up the volume a little so it's easier to hear. Let's roll that clip.
What did it feel like to turn from someone who is essentially a witness to history and someone who gives context and sort of collates these events for us to understand them, and someone sitting there in the Oval Office trying to advise the president over the best course of action? Because that doesn't seem like in your job description.
No, it is. I'm trying to be careful. I'm saying that I spent a lot of time. What would full mobilization against the virus mean? And I had 12 to 14 areas like testing, international cooperation, and I went through them with Trump. And I said, "What are you doing about these things?" And then at the end, he said, "Did you write those down?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Read them again to me." And he said, "Good. Thank you." And of course, we never had full mobilization.
Do you have all of these conversations recorded, even the ones?
Yes, I recorded 19 conversations.
Yeah, as you know, he's recorded 19 different conversations, including this one. So it exists out there. The book's released, so there's no reason to be holding back on this. Maybe he released more excerpts, and we just haven't seen anybody pick up on this one. But, to the extent that you can demand this, I suppose, from our journalist friends, perhaps a small campaign in the middle of the large campaign to be rid of Trump entirely from political power, might make some sense. And it could generate a nice story. So if you have any bored journalist friends who'd like to dig into this, let them know about this. I thought that was a pretty good point. Not the biggest one out there, certainly, because Trump's intention to see us all dead would be the top story of the day, let's say. But yeah, pretty interesting. I'd be curious to know too, just like Woodward was, which ones of these things have you done, and did anything change? Could we rehabilitate Woodward's image in any small way by saying, well, this positive development by way of mitigation may have come from his being the first one to make the president aware that there was something he could be doing in this context, or did he express genuine interest in these things from the sound of the tape, write them down, and then forget about the whole thing? And if only he had a longer attention span, more Americans might be alive today. That might be the story as well. But thanks, Art, for bringing that to our attention. I'd say good call on that one, and we ought to hold on to it. All right, let's see. Oh, here's an interesting piece that I guess we could share with you. Gabe Sherman. I say Gabriel Sherman. I call him Gabe because we're close. Really, because I forgot the rest of his name there for a second. Don Jr., he writes in Vanity Fair. This is a great headline. Don Jr. thinks Trump Sr. is acting crazy. The president's COVID joyride has the family divided. This is a very short item, and it's a little, consequently, a little short on the detail. I don't know what to make of it exactly, and we don't see it corroborated at this point in any other major publications, but it's a difficult one to track down. But Gabriel Sherman has been able to get these nuggets, and it's just a nugget. So here we go. The president's recklessness at Walter Reed has Don Jr. pushing for an intervention, but Ivanka and Jared, quote, keep telling Trump how great he's doing, a source says. That's the subheader. Probably can skip subheaders these days and just read it to you in the substance or the body of the article. Donald Trump's erratic and reckless behavior, I said that carefully, erratic and reckless behavior in the last 24 hours has opened a rift in the Trump family. There's a lot of rifts in the Trump family, Mary will tell you, over how to rein in the out-of-control president, according to two Republicans briefed on the family conversations, which is a weird category of people. Who gets briefed on their family conversations? Sources said Donald Trump Jr. is deeply upset by his father's decision to drive around Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Anybody would be out of breath just from saying that. It's his decision to drive around in what was then last night with members of the Secret Service while he was infected with COVID-19. Don Jr. thinks Trump is acting crazy. One of the sources told me the stunt outraged medical experts, including an attending physician at Walter Reed. According to sources, Don Jr. has told friends that he tried lobbying Ivanka, Eric, and Jared to convince the president that he needs to stop acting unstable. Stop the acting, Dad. Be unstable. I don't know. Don Jr. has said he wants to stage an intervention, but Jared and Ivanka keep telling Trump how great he's doing. This source said Don Jr. is said to be reluctant to confront his father alone. That's right. He'll get slapped like he did by not wearing a suit to the baseball game in the mythology of the family. Don said, I'm not going to be the only one to tell him he's acting crazy, the source added. One area where the family seems united is over the president's manic tweeting early Monday morning. After Trump sent out more than a dozen all-caps tweets, the Trump children told people they want Trump to stop. They're all worried. They've tried to get him to stop tweeting, a source close to the family told me. The Trump family's private concern about Trump's behavior could raise questions about his fitness for office. Also, his craziness could raise those questions. Trump has been prescribed drugs that medical experts say can seriously impair his cognitive function. That would probably be, among others, perhaps chiefly the steroid that he was prescribed. Lots of descriptions from people who have taken it and from pharmacists and doctors saying that it can cause some serious neurocognitive disruption, which would be the kind way of saying some of the things it can do. I keep forgetting, what is it, like dexamethasone, something. I never can remember the name, and my mind wants to go to, dextromethadone, maltodextrose. Which of those things is it that he's taking? You know the one. Dex is what people are calling it for short, and that's much easier and avoids all of these problems. So anyway, he's been prescribed drugs that, can seriously impair his cognitive function, which is important as president. Not so much to Trump as to the rest of us. Last night, the New York Times reported that steroids, which Trump is reportedly taking specifically, here it is. I should have just kept reading. Dexamethasone, are known to affect mood, causing euphoria or a general happiness. But also, by the way, we should just throw in there, other people say more like psychotic episodes are possible as well. Anyway, there's a long history in the Trump family of denying serious illness. This is an interesting bit. According to a Trump family friend, Trump's father, Fred Trump Sr., insisted on working even after his Alzheimer's disease advanced in the 1990s. To retire is to expire, Fred Sr. would say. Friends said that as Fred Sr.'s disease worsened, he once came down the stairs wearing 3 neckties, for instance. The family created a system so that Fred could think he was still running the Trump organization. Every day, Fred Sr. would go to the office in Brooklyn, and they would give him blank papers to sort through and sign. The phone on Fred's desk was set up so that it could only dial out to his secretary. Fred pretended to work, the family friend said. The White House did not immediately respond for comment. And I guess they're just using the same trick on Donald now, as we all watched him sign blank papers, and not for the first time. Okay, so I think that's some interesting and fun and important background to add to the mix. What else have I got here? Other things that I'll save this one for Greg to share tomorrow, mostly because, one, Greg shared it with me, and two, it comes from the Wall Street Journal, to which I do not subscribe, and I don't think that there's any way around their paywall, as is often the case with Pocket, but at least the headline was interesting. IRS investigating NRA's Wayne Lapierre for possible tax fraud. Yeah, that's worthy of a sound effect, I think, at this point. You knew it was coming, though. and here it comes. Let's see. Other items to round up as we head into the break and anticipate speaking with Joan in our last segment. Why not this one? From tweeted around by the Mueller, She Wrote podcast. That's what they call it. Find it under Mueller, She Wrote, Robert Mueller, the failed investigator into the Trump-Russia story. He revealed all sorts of information which would ordinarily lead you to conclude that he had been a successful investigator. He just had difficulty communicating his point and getting anybody to care about it in positions of power. They were never going to care about anything. Anyway, imagine basing your whole podcast on that, too. Your brand based on Robert Mueller. Well, anyway, that was a bad idea. And, however, they tweet out this information. Breaking, just so that they're still relevant. The Russian agent that gave Senator Ron Johnson, sick now with COVID, not the agent that gave him COVID, but rather the agent that gave him materials that he used to investigate Hunter Biden in the Senate, has had his visa revoked. So I guess they are tired of him, and his work didn't do the trick, and so kicking him out of the country. This is reported by the tweet of Natasha Bertrand, linking to a Washington Post piece. The revocation of Ukrainian fixer Andrei Telezenko's visa comes as U.S. officials crack down on Russian efforts to influence the November vote. That seems unlikely. Telezenko was the one who originally alleged a Democratic conspiracy with Ukrainian embassy officials in 2016, and I guess is having his visa revoked and he's getting kicked out of the country. The linked article is the Washington Post piece titled "Trump Administration Revokes the Visa of a Ukrainian Political Fixer Tied to Giuliani." So, an interesting outcome that I wasn't expecting, I guess. And every once in a while, the Trump, or what counts as the Trump administration, which I guess he would say are deep state actors acting without his permission or say so, do what appears to be the right thing from time to time. And they appear unable to stop them. Ellen Nakashima, David Stern, Natalie Grivniak, and Paul Son on this piece from yesterday. Let's skim through a couple paragraphs before we jump out for our third break. The State Department last month revoked the visa of a Ukrainian political fixer who aided President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, in his gambit last year to dig up information from Ukraine that would damage former Vice President Joe Biden in this upcoming election, according to U.S. officials. The revocation of Ukrainian fixer Andrei Telezenko's visa comes as U.S. officials crack down on Russian efforts to influence the November vote. The revocation, which hasn't been previously reported, came shortly before the Treasury Department sanctioned a different Ukrainian who was also cooperating with Giuliani, lawmaker Andrei Derkach, and dubbed Derkach an active Russian agent for over a decade, and said he was trying to interfere in the election, the U.S. officials said. But again, let me stress for you, in the background of our political union with the Russians to own the globalists overarching theme, we are talking here in Andrei Derkach about a Ukrainian lawmaker, a member of the Ukrainian parliament, who the United States government believes has been an active Russian agent for over a decade. We're no longer surprised, I guess, between when we find out these sorts of relationships between Ukrainians and Russians. But it is true that we're talking about somebody in the elected parliamentary body, legislative body of Ukraine, who's an active Russian agent. But it can't possibly happen anywhere else, right? Right, except for the fact, of course, that the Ukrainian delegation of lawmakers came all the way to Washington, D.C. in June of 2016 to warn the Republican leadership in the House of what the Russians were doing in Ukraine, and that their plans were to do this all across the West. And this was the big meeting and the big warning from which Kevin McCarthy found only inspiration to make jokes about Dana Rohrabacher and Putin paying Trump. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Joan McCarter is here with us, so we get to jump right into the next segment here. I think we, I don't know how much more of the story we have to find out that I was reading through, just so that it's on the record. Everybody that was giving Rudy Giuliani alleged dirt on Biden, who's from Ukraine, is a Russian agent. Just thought I would put that on the record. And again, just to reiterate, the most important part of the story for me, I think everybody knows that he was dealing with, Russian agents and, let's say, suspect Ukrainians to get this information. I mean, that played out pretty clearly, but the intelligence conclusion that they were, in fact, active Russian agents is, one, not surprising, but it is interesting to note that, like I said, we're talking about somebody who was a member of the Ukrainian parliament, who U.S. intelligence believes, while serving in the national government of Ukraine, was actually a Russian agent instead of, serving in the Ukrainian parliament, not actually loyal to Ukraine, actually loyal to Russia. And that's a little bit troubling. And I will connect it again to our own Republicans here. We were warned point blank that this is what was happening in Ukraine, and that it was Russia's plan to have it happen in every Western democracy where they could manage it. And they didn't get it. It's like it didn't penetrate their skulls. And I guess to the extent that it did, if it did at all, it did in ways that Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy and who else was in the room? Kathy McMorris. Is McMorris Rogers? Is that I can't even remember.
Yeah, and Steve Scalise.
Scalise was in there too as well. Yeah, that's right. And wasn't Patrick McHenry there too? Right? I think
was he?
Yeah,
I
think he was in that. He's not in the transcript, but I believe that the stories have him in the room. But we can double check that. The real point here is that the top Republican leadership was warned point blank by the then current Ukrainian prime minister, who would serve in the legislature with these people. And of course, if he's been an active Russian agent for a decade, that means that back in 2016 he was serving there and as a Russian agent, and the PM knew it, and he came and he said, this is something that the Russians want to do here. McCarthy gets halfway to the conclusion and says, I think Putin is paying Dana Rohrabacher and, of course, Trump. But he kind of fails to take the last step, and instead they all as a group decide, well, did you say he was paying Rohrabacher? Maybe we should do this. I don't know whether they ever think, let's get paid for it, but they basically come to this conclusion. It will help Republicans win the election, and so we will say nothing about it. And if that means that we're dupes for Putin, Well, maybe at least we can get some cash out of it because Rohrabacher is, and he's an idiot. So surely smart people like us can also get a payday too. But in the meantime, we'll definitely say nothing. Let us swear to say nothing. That's how you know we're a family here. We're going to allow this to happen and then enjoy being in the majority and having the White House. What a fantastic outcome this is for us. And everybody seems to kind of forget that. Even though here on the show we remind everybody of it every chance we get, it wasn't just McCarthy saying too much and having committing a gaffe and revealing what he really thought. It was, I missed the point of the whole point of the visit, and not only missed it but said instead of combating it, we should get in on it. And that's where we are today. And Kevin McCarthy is the leader of the House Republicans. Yeah. Right, Ron Johnson. That's where we started with on this one. The guy he got his information from just got kicked out of the country as a Russian agent. He, too, a Ukrainian. And, I guess it's still hard for us sometimes to separate or to think of it as a major event that somebody from Ukraine could be an active Russian agent because, they used to have a political unity. And Putin still aims for it. But again, the warning was that it would be happening in France when the Le Pen campaign was underway, that they sought to have it happen here in the United States using the Trump campaign as their vehicle. And these guys said, well, one, we don't care about France, and two, we don't really care about America either. Can we get in on it? So, okay. Just thought I'd point that out. Anyway, what else is new? Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned, but
Been gasping for air lately?
Yes, mostly can't believe that he's president. God. Yeah, that was some video. I've seen now 2 angles on it, and one in which he particularly looks in pain. And,
yes.
I don't know. That's good. I don't like him. He's a really terrible person. And but he's bringing this on himself.
Totally.
So
but unfortunately he's bringing it on everybody else in the White House.
Right. That's true too. And there's a poor 15-year-old girl in the Coney
people
house.
who chose to work for him, great.
Yeah.
All you political people who
I guess
wanted to whatever they wanted to work for Donald Trump for, fine. You went into this knowingly. It's all of the support staff. We already know that 2 housekeepers have gotten it.
Yeah.
We don't know how many people who have no choice, but this is their paycheck, are being exposed. It's horrifying. Just
and
horrifying.
Their families as well.
And now we've got Mike Pence going to be in the same room as Kamala Harris. And he's supposed to be in quarantine.
Yeah. They'll be ignoring that, of course, because they're only guidelines, and we're very powerful, and it doesn't matter what people say to us. We're going to go and do this. And I guess he was also, he was trying to fight against allowing plastic shielding, but I guess he's lost that fight.
He lost that fight. I don't think they should have it at all.
The debate.
Personally.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not.
He's supposed to be in quarantine.
Yeah. There's no point in encouraging him to break his quarantine. They should. I'm sure that they would reject. Pence was. I'm not going to do it remotely because that's going to convey the wrong message. But yeah, this may be the last year that there's a commission on presidential debates, which was a replacement for the League of Women Voters running it. And when they were undermined at every turn by Republicans, we came up with this other stupid thing. And this also is undermined at every turn by Republicans, and I think we should scrap that one as well, although I have no idea how they're going to... What it means is Republicans can't be made to abide by any set of normal rules, and so we should stop debating them, I guess. But you know how people are. They want to hear from both sides before they enter into an election. Should I go with the American people or the Russian agent people who all have COVID and want us all to die? I made my decision without debates. And as early voting makes it more and more possible for more people to, feel confident in casting their ballots before even the first debate, maybe that's how we phase this thing out. I don't think it's great for democracy, but
the debates aren't either.
Yeah, you're right.
When has a debate ever really, really made a difference?
That is true. We do have
in the last couple of
stats that
decades,
say that,
anyway.
yeah. Right. It's been a while, and it's sort of they're a holdover from an era when that mattered, or when that was people's first exposure to a clash of ideas between the campaigns, I guess. And I don't know what people were doing before.
Well, we
then,
didn't have cable news before on 24
yes.
hours. We didn't have so many outlets for candidates to be out in our TVs in front of us. You know, they didn't hit every state, certainly, so you wouldn't get a chance to see them in person. And you could see their ads, but, that's their ads.
Yeah.
You wanted to see them face-to-face, how they answered questions.
Right.
But at this point, we've seen everything we're going to see out of everybody, so why do we need this debate when they're not really debates anyway?
That's true. It's just repetitions of those same ads and press gaggles that we've seen the whole time anyway. So, yeah, they're of diminishing use, and they may fall by the wayside as a result. But
I hope so.
Yeah, I guess so. Then you
and
won't
not
have to
only
cover
because I have to block them.
I had a feeling.
Last Tuesday broke me. Kagro.
I can imagine.
Wait, was it only last Tuesday? 2 Tuesdays ago.
Oh, who knows? Yeah, I don't know.
When was it? Oh,
I don't know.
see, I'm broke.
Yeah,
It broke
right.
me.
There's no telling time anymore. It just doesn't work the same way. But yeah, the thing that was presented to us as a debate was crazy. I guess it was last Tuesday because they just got around to making fun of it on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Oh, so we had white supremacists in the debate. We had his taxes. We had Melania hating Christmas. We had him getting COVID. We had him going into the hospital and coming out of the hospital.
All since
in a week.
Yeah. Well, that's par for the course here. So the vice presidential debate is coming up. Is that Wednesday? Or did they do it
tomorrow?
Tuesday? Yeah. Okay. And then the next presidential debate comes when? Is it the week after that?
The week after.
Okay.
The week after.
So, yeah.
If
many things. If Trump goes, is alive, I don't know,
If he can breathe,
right.
If he can sit up.
So, that's a question. I'm curious. I don't know whether Trump wants to be there or not. It's hard to tell. There's good reason to think he wouldn't.
I think steroid Trump does.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's true.
We'll see what happens when the steroids wear off.
Yeah.
He should be. I don't know. I don't know how the treatment works, but he should be on the decline now in taking the steroids. They have to wean him down from them, give him smaller doses.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that would be really interesting. Or I wonder if it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to coming off of it, and whether he says, I want to be on these for the debate, so I have lots of energy. And whether any doctor in the world would agree to that, I don't know. But he could order them somehow. He could get one of these military doctors.
Judging by the what we've seen of Dr.
He's
Coney,
out.
yeah, sure, he'd do that.
I guess so. He might be willing to do that, and that would really be something. It occurs to me, this is setting up so naturally. With the last debate, of course, and I guess nothing came of it, Trump demanded ahead of time, we got to have a drug test, right? So now we got to have a drug test because we know that he's on drugs, and we know that the drugs are steroids. That's even more hilarious.
And we know what is so remarkable to me is looking at all of the side effects, all of the things that this steroid can cause in people. It's like amplified Trump. He's got every one of those things already.
They should just
delusions of grandeur. Yeah.
Name it after him.
It just amplifies everything that he already is. Angry, belligerent.
Yeah, I mean, what a danger. Maybe they wanted him out of Walter Reed as well. We don't want to
Apparently
take care of this
possible.
guy. Oh my God. They should just call it, Trumpazone or something like that. Give it to you. You turn into Trump, but you get better from COVID. You want it? I don't know. Give me a moment.
Remember the last years of Brezhnev's life? Are you old enough to
I remember
kind of
that,
be
he was.
cognizant of what was going on?
I knew who he was, but I don't know if I knew anything about how he was living his life. But
He was super, super sick
Yeah. Okay.
for like the last 2 years. And they kept dragging him out to the top of the Lenin Mausoleum for
This I remember,
various
yeah.
parades on Red Square and stuff.
Right.
Where he would stand and cough and wave, and
Yeah. This I
nothing so
remember.
much reminded me of that as Trump's stupid ride around
Oh yeah. Well, that was
at Walter Reed.
pretty amazing.
Although with Brezhnev, it was the Politburo saying, we've got to show that we still have leadership while we're having this
Right.
cat fight behind the scenes trying to figure out who's going to replace him. We've got to keep him alive, and we've got to keep the people thinking he's alive.
Mm-hmm.
So they drag him out, make him stand up there, and
Well, they decided who would take over after. Yeah, I remember that was my first exposure to Kremlinology. That that you were supposed to be able to interpret who was next by whose job it was to hold Brezhnev up, who was next to him,
pretty much
up on the
Yeah.
wall. Yeah, and wow, yeah, that does bring back some memories. I don't know how clear I was on how weird it was that they were holding him up. I just figured everybody was, there was old and sick and and dying. And about the same time, if I recall, it was about the same time that the popes were dying very quickly too. So becoming aware of what was happening in the world news, and that around the world leaders didn't last all that long in some places. But but I still remember, that weird quick succession of Russian leaders ending in Gorbachev finally dissolving the Soviet Union. But I remember the people in between now. Now that you bring it up, Andropov and Chernenko and others, each taking 6-month shifts. I guess,
right.
until
I don't
could
think
find
they
somebody.
knew Andropov was going to die as soon as he did. I think that came as a bit of a shock to them.
Yeah, I
Chernenko
suppose so.
was just he was a
No health there.
placekeeper.
Yeah, and not for long either. Okay, well that makes us old, but no older
We
than
are old.
Gorbachev
We
was
are
at
old.
the time.
It's just always fun when what I actually got my degrees in
You like to be able
relate
to use it,
somehow to my current life.
right?
And right now it's the whole Potemkin village. He's taking the best from Russia, the worst from Russia and from the Soviet Union.
Yeah, well,
Having
it's nice to bring
his-
those back.
The people who were out there in front of Walter Reed, it was mostly the Maryland GOP.
Oh yeah,
It coordinated the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
The State
Well,
Party
that's-
coordinated the whole thing.
it makes some sense.
That's who was out there.
Yeah, I would have thought that. I mean, they
So
had
it was
some.
a Potemkin protest of support. Protest gathering.
yeah.
I don't know.
Brooks Brothers riot type thing. You need a crowd on the street. Apparently, sending them pizza as well to keep them fed and happy out there. Although the rumor was that it was Donald Trump himself paying out of pocket and out of generosity and thanks to the people who were out there.
Yeah, right.
I have
That
my
would
doubts
happen.
about that one. Right. So, all right, that makes some sense, though, that they would have organized it by the Republicans in Maryland. I mean, there was a little bit of, maybe Proud Boy presence. I think Gavin, what's his name, showed up.
Yeah, the Proud Boys showed up because,
Yeah.
that's going to
They
happen.
had the flags. They needed to give the regular Maryland Republicans probably didn't have enough. So they brought them some flags and ate the pizza and left. And I'm sure that the staff at Walter Reed was, the silver lining of Trump leaving early despite their best medical advice was that maybe this crowd would go away. So
With their very loud music. Hopefully
Yeah.
the crowd has gone away. Poor Walter Reed. They didn't deserve any of this.
yeah, it would be really weird if they were just hanging out there still. We've moved in. So, all right, what else happening here? We can scroll through the your latest and diaries and what's coming up on the front page. But
we never know.
Yeah.
You know, we government got funded, so that happened.
That's a nice thing.
And the good part of that was that some money went to food aid.
Yes, right.
For families with children. That. So, you know, some people aren't going to be hungry.
That's nice. Always
that's a positive.
Doing. Yeah.
What else? We don't know if COVID relief. Mnuchin and Pelosi are still talking, not in person, because she won't let him come to the Hill and talk to her in person because he could be a carrier.
Right.
I think is very smart of her.
Yeah, wise. And it probably saves him some time too. So he's willing. But yeah,
and on the Senate, you're going to be busy with procedure, my friend.
Yes, so it would appear.
As we try to figure out if there's anything Democrats can do to stop the juggernaut of Amy Coney Barrett, the super spreader, from super spreading onto the Supreme Court.
Yeah. I'm very interested in watching and monitoring her health in the next couple days and weeks, too, because I do understand that she had a coronavirus infection over the summer, and so I guess we're expecting that she won't have one this time because maybe she's still immune, but that'll tell us an awful lot, by the way.
It will tell us an awful lot, epidemiologically and politically.
Yeah.
There have been cases of reinfection, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to get one, it was this one. Although, maybe not. I don't know. It depends on who was spreading it. But, I mean, that announcement was swimming with virus.
Yeah.
And, by the way, one story I didn't get to today is that the White House has announced no intention whatsoever of doing contact tracing over this. Which, again, is like, but that's a thing that has to happen.
And what makes that even more enraging? The next day, he and Melania were at a Gold Star family reception. That's what they did on Sunday.
Wonderful. So they're all sick, too, or at least at risk. And nobody's even talking about that one. I hadn't heard that at all.
Yeah. I just found out yesterday.
Amazing. I mean, lots of things. Just the fact that they were anywhere. I mean, I'm not that broken up about, like, the Bedminster fundraiser, except that, of course, you know, again, innocent people, and probably, given the crowd, more butlers and housekeepers are going to get sick as a result, because that's who, you know, that's the company they keep. But yeah, I mean, they were calling in a panic. You know, do I need to get tested? Yeah, you need to get tested. Do I need to report to anybody for contact tracing? No, that we're not doing. So now we have the answer to, I guess, Woodward's question about, you know, which of these things are you doing to help control it? Well, contact tracing they'll allow to take place for regular people, but lots of theories about why no contact tracing here. First theory, of course, being, well, that just reveals that Trump is the super spreader. You're going to end up with a chart that says he's at fault personally. We don't want that. Somebody else, of course, pointing out that would be a great backdoor to getting visitor logs for the White House, which they don't maintain for purposes of not telling anybody who they're meeting with. If they contact trace
that hadn't occurred to me. Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty good call. So, you know, who knows what... okay, fine, we'll do contact tracing. Now we have to report that we have to call Putin. Great. Damn. Yes, he was here in the White House. Shoot, we were hoping to hide that, you know. But think about all the people who could be now worried about it. Mohammed bin Salman, are you getting tested? Putin getting tested? All these people could be in danger. That'd be an interesting thing. Take down the leadership of the world accidentally this way.
From what I understand, Putin's pretty much hermetically sealed.
Yeah, I doubt he made the trip, certainly. But, you know,
no,
who's
but,
the
you know,
ambassador
somebody,
now?
who knows how many Russians have been in and out of the White House.
Right. So,
and then report to him. But people reporting to him, I've read that they have extraordinary measures for people going through, you know, decompression chambers, aerosol bleach tunnels that they have to walk through. I think
despite it all,
pretty well secure from this.
Okay, well, you know, he can order those things. What will be interesting is at what point does Trump get pissed that why didn't you tell me about these? Why don't I have these things that Putin has? When were you going to tell me that I should have done this stuff? Which Putin will laugh at and say, what do I care about you?
Said you believed that it's real, that it's worse than the flu.
Right. What would be the point of telling you these things? But yeah, they may have all sorts of crazy countermeasures for it. Meanwhile, here we kept telling ourselves that Trump was living in a, purposely in a bubble, keeping himself safe from it. And no, apparently that's never been the case. And even all the time that they said, well, I'm getting tested daily, that might not even turn out to be true. Which, again, here you would have every reason to believe it's true, and yet, so therefore, it's probably not one of the dumb things he's lying about. Turns out to be one of the dumb things he's lying about anyway.
I think it's one of the dumb things he was lying about. I don't think he was getting tested. But I think he got tested early. I don't know. The timeline on this is messed up.
Still
and
unclear,
I think that they knew at that Rose Garden ceremony. What was the ceremony where they had Pence and Trump at podiums that were 20 feet apart?
Oh, yeah.
I should say lecterns. Right. They're not podiums. They're lecterns.
Okay.
Which day was that? I don't know. I
saw a picture of it recently.
Was that Sunday?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
They had the Rose Garden thing Saturday, and then that was Sunday, I think.
Okay.
Maybe it was Monday.
It was
at a certain point in there, they knew he had it.
Yeah.
They knew he had it before he went to the debate.
Yeah, and right. Oh, that story about like showing up late so that you didn't have to take the agreed to test prior to going out there. Although, again, I don't know. He was probably a pretty good bet. If he had showed up, taken a test, been positive, would the networks have said, that's it, no debate? Or would they have been like, well, hold your breath, we're having the debate?
I question that too.
So who knows?
And what are they doing now about next week? I would really like to know how the networks and how the debate commission are thinking about next week.
That is a good question. I'd like to know myself. Let's ask. They might.
We're in a position to ask, aren't we?
I guess we could. Right? Seems like a lot of trouble. I'll tweet them. See if they answer. I don't know. Yeah, but this requires like real reporting. I don't know if they'd be willing to answer, or if they even have an answer, or whether they're just saying, I don't know. I'm just hoping he cancels, and if he doesn't, then on Monday we'll come up with a. But they have to be working on, like, what if he insists on debating? Well, we'll have to do it remotely. Well, we better check Zoom, make sure it works, or something, right?
You would think.
So, yeah, that's a great question. Well, maybe we'll find out about that. I'm curious myself, and I guess we'll find out for sure next week at some point. And
at which point we'll have to talk about what's happening in the Senate.
Okay.
Because at this point, they will be having the confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah, they can do that.
Even if they're having them remotely, we're not really clear how that's going to happen yet. Yeah, we have to think about that.
Yeah. Well,
and you're the person to think about it with.
Okay. Well, I've been doing a little bit of thinking about it. We'll talk about it, I guess, a little bit next week when it really push comes to shove. And I have some reading to do on what practices the Judiciary Committee has actually been utilizing during this period, because I don't know if they have rules in place that they can do a hearing, I think, remotely. I don't know whether they can do votes in committee.
They can't do a vote remotely.
They can?
No, they cannot.
Okay. Yeah.
So we've got what's in Democrats' control in terms of forcing delays. We have what's out of everybody's control and not knowing who else might be sick or how sick they might be.
Yeah.
Including Chuck Grassley, who's 87 years old and refuses to take a test.
Well, they cause cases. So
Right.
He doesn't want to have one of those cases. So if I don't get tested.
And from what I hear from Senate sources, this is a very, very real fear among Democrats.
But
they're just refusing to test or refusing to release the results of tests.
Yeah. Well,
they're legitimately scared up there.
I would be too. I mean,
Republican.
Right. This isn't even the first round of Republicans coming down with infections. And there's been a couple of Democrats, too, and they isolate. That's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
The Republicans seem to think it's hilarious to expose other people. So
yes. They're talking about going onto the Senate floor infected so that they can vote.
Yeah.
For Amy Coney.
Right. And they will do that. And,
Bob Cotton and Ron Johnson have both promised that that's what they'll do.
Yeah. I mean, unless they're not ambulatory, they'll go on there. And if you have a problem with being around them, get out. That's the way they'll approach it. So the idea that having them with positive diagnoses was going to cause them to be absent for quorum calls, probably just not true. But they'll brave anything. All right, well, by next week, we'll know a lot more about it and talk to you about it then. Thanks so much for coming by.
All right, bye-bye.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning
with David Waldman.
Yeah, all right. Well, short on time again, unfortunately, but we'll check in next week. Maybe we'll know more. Maybe we won't. That's true. Great observations. Thanks so much for coming by again today, Joan. We'll talk to you next week. Next up, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam, who faces the daunting task of updating you on all the things we had to let fall by the wayside. Next.